Hello and welcome to Voices of Parenting podcast. I am so glad you're here. My name is Mussi I am an advanced nurtured heart approach trainer. I am a parenting coach. I am also an inner wealth coach, which means that I help people rediscover and connect to the people that they truly were all along, but may have gotten forgotten along the way. So to find out more about me and what I offer, you can check out mussydiskin.com. I would love to connect and I would love to hear your feedback. Reach out to energizinghearts@gmail.com. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back with my brother, Avraham, Coach Abe, who's out there doing amazing things. We've had quite a few conversations, I think, at least 3 that I can remember off the top of my head, maybe even 4, and they're always remarkable, and I actually get good feedback, which is not always the case because we're all busy in our lives, but feedback is a wonderful thing to get, and I did get it after our recordings together, which is awesome. So I know people want you back.
Always glad to be here.
Yeah. And I know that you are well-versed in many different things, and you have very many tools in your pocket when it comes to coaching your clients or just even living your life. And I thought I would pick your brain on, like, why nurtured heart? Like, what is it about nurtured heart why is it still here? Why is it still in your pocket? Why is it still one of your tools, right? Like, what about it resonates with you, has impacted your life in a way that you feel you want to keep? Tell us what gets you about it.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's always good to be here, and I love what you do. And it's always nice to get feedback, direct and indirect, about you, but also about Nurtured Heart Approach and people with their kids and with their relationships and other things in their life. Just how much good it seems to be bringing. It's a good question. Like, there are a lot of different aspects of Nurtured Heart Approach. The most obvious ones that jumped out at me first, it's not what I'm going to focus on, but the first things that jumped out at me is kind of the more external thing of focusing on the positive, or I guess you could say energizing the good and not energizing the bad. So that's a type of paradigm shift that I think everyone could use in life, because whatever we focus on grows. So like in a relationship, do we want to focus on what's going wrong or what's going right? I think that's just a basic thing that I very much live with. That's a little bit easier, I guess you could say, like a cop-out. It's the most obvious, probably. Another point, not to focus on for now, but I think was the biggest paradigm shift for me probably is understanding what timeout is versus what it isn't. Right? So timeout is a time to be more about self-care. Timeout, let's say for a kid, is focusing on the child's needs more than when they're not in timeout, right? As opposed to like putting them away. It's quite the opposite. It's saying, life, you have to perform in life, but there are times when you need a break to focus on yourself and figure out what you need to be able to continue performing. And that time is kind of more essential and more about what life is really versus the game. So that was a very big paradigm shift for me. It's like, well, what are kids supposed to do in timeout? Well, timeout is the time to realize, like, if you're having a hard time, stop and pause and learn how to self-coach or whatever it is that you need to do. Those two things definitely had a very big effect on me in my life, recognizing that type of, positivity bias and that type of reframing regulation and timeout. Let's say in a relationship, for example, taking a break, taking space, right, is not stonewalling or ignoring, but it's actually the opposite. It's taking a moment to say, I'm probably not going to get anywhere in this space. I'm triggered, so what do I need? It's not a punishment, it's the opposite. Part of me is saying it needs to be supported or held or validated in order for me to move on, right? So those two things are definitely helpful. I guess to go a little deeper, I think the thing that most kind of live with, Nurture Heart Approach idea, is really how the Nurture Heart Approach seems to me to be a solution to a deeper issue, an issue that I would say probably I struggled with a lot, or maybe still struggle with. And this issue, I guess you could boil it down to having 2 parts. One part is the belief that something's wrong with me. And the second part is what you can call codependence, or seeking external validation or other esteem rather than self-esteem, right? So these 2 sides of one coin, where I often had this nagging feeling that something's wrong with me. And number 2, that my worthiness and my value comes from what other people think of me or what they say or their approval or validation. I would say that those 2 things probably caused the most damage for me, even physical symptoms. But probably most of my unhealthy behaviors developed as an escape from that, or caused by that, right? So, and I see with a lot of the people that I meet, a lot of people that I coach, these 2 kind of underlying beliefs, something's wrong with me and I need other people's, I need to fit into other people's approval or validation, seem to be kind of underlying a lot of that anxiety, a lot of that pain, a lot of that avoidance, shame. And to me, and I don't know if other people see it this way, but to me, the nurture heart approach really addresses that very directly, in the sense that, I think the nurture heart approach can be misunderstood. I've talked about this before, but misunderstood as, using positivity as a trick, as a way to, like, almost like animal training, like, as a way to use reward, good behavior and reinforce positive reinforcement. But I think that's a misunderstanding. I think the core idea is, what does a kid think about himself or herself, right? So I think the real goal of the nurture heart approach is for a child to recognize two things. Number one, no matter how much work my behavior needs, I'm still a valuable person. I'm great. Maybe it doesn't focus as much on that greatness that's completely divorced from behavior. Maybe it helps the kid see it through behavior, but I think it's still the same core idea, which is like, you deserve to be here. I love you. Or I'm happy to see you. There's a lot of neuroscience about that. I'm happy to see you. Full stop, separate from how you're showing up in your behavior, right? So for a child to get that message of nothing's wrong with you, maybe there's a lot wrong with your behavior, but there's nothing wrong with you, right? I feel like that's a very central idea the nurture heart approach kind of conveys to a child, number one. And number two, the real idea of, like, when it comes to bullying, for example, where one kid calls another kid stupid, and then, a really important question is, the recipient of that bullying, do you think you're stupid? What do you think about it? Right? And if you kind of have an inner knowing or confidence, then it doesn't hurt as much when someone else bullies you. So it's kind of that letting go of external validation, or your worthiness is your productivity, or all of that. And it's really connected. It's just knowing I'm a good kid, right? Not in a false, fake way of I'm doing things well when I'm not, right? But there's something in me as a person that's separate from how I show up and how I behave. And if my behavior is completely not the way it needs to be, it's just a matter of how to channel, how to develop the skills, or how to channel that goodness and greatness into particular behaviors or whatever it is. So there's a real deeper paradigm shift of, something's wrong with me, to there's nothing wrong with me. Now, how do I practically show up? And even negative coping behaviors, addictions, really, really bad behaviors, I go a little deeper with that, which is like, well, those are, if they're coping mechanisms, those are actually the body's response to try to cope with pain and difficulty. So it's not good at all, but it's being driven not by something broken, but it's being driven by something that's there to try to protect you or keep you safe. Right? So at its root, there's nothing wrong with you. And I feel that nurtured heart approach really does probably succeed, because that's the core message that it's probably giving over. And related, you tell me if we're going to too many topics, but I think this is a key point, is that there's this myth, at least that I've heard, that when you talk about permissive or versus authoritarian parenting, or in general in life, there's this myth, don't be too soft, because that's enabling, right? If it's okay, then you're enabling it to continue. And, I really believe that, because it's very convincing. The literature is very convincing. The energy, emotional energy behind it, the philosophy is very convincing. But my lived experience has kind of allowed me to have this the emperor is not wearing any clothes moment. I may have talked about this before, but it's like, wait, like, everyone's saying that, but that's not how it works. It was like the day that I woke up and felt like, not that anyone's maliciously lying, but that's not really how it works. Like, all of the, making sure that we're not acting comfortable with someone who's behaving wrong, just to make sure that we're not enabling, actually leads to be more stuckness in that behavior. And telling a kid, no matter how bad your behavior is, I still love you and accept you and you're welcome here, that led very quickly to change, right? So to me, it makes sense, because of these two core ideas that drive these bad behaviors. If it's something's wrong with me, if it's I really need to perform, otherwise I'm worthless, and those two things are what drives the problematic behavior, it makes sense that in terms of an approach, if we become tough, if we give a message of you only get my energy, or you only get my love or acceptance, if you're doing the right thing, so to speak, and it's not about you, it's more about kind of your productivity, that itself isn't necessarily going to bring a deeper change. The deeper change, this might sound a little confusing, but the deeper change I have found comes from the idea that I'm not afraid of your behavior or of your energy or of your intensity. And I always see through the behavior. I just see you. And that's how I see myself. I see the other person as a person. The worse your behavior, the more obvious that you're struggling with something. And I become curious about how to support you more, not less. And so even in relationships, there's a theory, and there's a lot of people who talk about, well, if your spouse is doing something that's not okay and you just love them anyway or whatever, you're basically saying that it's okay to get stepped on, right? And maybe sometimes, but what I found is exactly the opposite. It's like, if someone is behaving in a way that's not okay, to me, that means that they need more support, not less. And then, if I have my own way of being okay and having healthy boundaries, right, then there's no risk or harm to enter into that person's world more. And instead of kind of, well, I'm walking away now. Right? Sometimes I have to do that, but it's more like, gosh, if you're throwing stuff at me, you're probably really not doing okay. How can I be here for you? Right? And so to me, it's very related to the nurture heart approach, because the essential paradigm shift is saying what drives bad behavior is this belief that I messed up or something's wrong with me. And the secure attachment idea of, well, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe your behavior is really messed up, but all of that is a sign that you're in pain or you need something, or, again, the whole world is yelling and screaming to some degree and saying like, no, don't do that. It's dangerous. You're enabling, you're being too permissive. But just somehow in my lived experience, in my own life and with other people, I found that this approach, which I very much relate to the nurtured heart approach, this approach, bottom line, statistically seems to lead to more of what we want, more results, more closeness, more connection. When the person next to me is behaving in a way that I really don't like, and I say, I don't see you as a monster. I see you as someone who's struggling. I'm not going to be silly and say what you're doing is okay, right? But that makes me curious about why you might be doing that, right? That itself, in a sense, allows for the other person to maybe also see themselves that way. Like, am I a monster, or am I someone who is behaving badly and I need to figure out how to stop doing that? So it's not like, it's okay, throw stuff at me. It's more like, it's not okay, but let's not get lost in the symptom. So in short, what really resonates me with the nurture heart approach is that I think the reason why it really gets kids to behave better is because it helps us all realize that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with us, and we don't need other people to approve in order to be a worthy individual. And because of that, we have that inner wealth and that inner knowledge of our own greatness to be able to then show up, even if someone else doesn't understand or like it.
Well, thank you. You said a lot of very profound things, very deep things, and so many directions. I want to ask you, okay, let me just say this. Something right at the end that jumped out at me is the shame that we create by insinuating that the person doesn't actually think that their own behavior is bad when we teach them that it's bad again and again. It's like, especially when we're talking any kid, anyone of any age, so not especially adults, no, little kids too. You have a kid who's doing something bad and you make it your business to go convince them that it's bad, to go teach them that it's bad. Who do you think they are? You think they're so bad, they're such a bad person that they think it's good to hit you? That they think it's the right thing to do? Like, this is your kid we're talking about, or this is your spouse we're talking about, someone who you birthed or married or love or loves you. And what you think, they think that it's okay to swear at you, to ignore you, to stonewall you, to abuse. Like, it's such a message of I think you're of down thinking. What's the word of
Condescending.
It's condescending, and it's like yeah, like just the judgment of like who I think you are. Whereas if it's not about, it's there's the deeper, and and even just the surface, even just surface nurtured heart. Even if I'm not coming from the deeper place, what happens, a byproduct of refusing to teach lessons in the negativity, is that we save ourselves from giving that message, because that true belief that you're talking about is we're good people, and 99.999% of the time we know our behavior is rotten. And we don't like it either. And you knowing that, and you trusting that, when you don't stop me from my bad behavior, my experience of that is you knowing, you, like you said, seeing through the behavior, you still giving me a chance to save face and trusting that I am a good person and that this behavior isn't a reflection of who I really am, and giving me that grace, because that's the truth. And I want you to know that. And it's so yucky and shameful and horrible when the other person starts teaching me lessons about my behavior and telling me about how bad it is, because you really think that I think that it's okay to hurt you. You really think that's who I am, that I want to hurt you, that I'm on purpose making your life miserable because like, who do you think I am? It's so yucky.
Yeah. Parents have said to me, but what about the fact that if I don't crack down on this or on A, B, C, or D, my kid will think it's okay?
Yeah.
And what I always say is it depends at what stage of education your kid is at. If your kid is at a stage where they don't know, then you can teach them. Yeah. But once they know, no more teaching anymore. Then what you're calling teaching is really control.
And the authenticity of that, like really being transparent with ourselves about that. If you really, really believe that they don't know, then there's no negativity in teaching. You're literally teaching someone. If you were teaching someone how to bake a cake for the very first time, you'd have a smile on your face, and you'd be sharing about the reasons why the egg need to be cracked like this. And if it cracks wrong, you'll laugh. because it's the first time they've ever done it. It doesn't
Exactly.
matter what you're teaching them. If you really believe they don't know, there's no reason to not have a smile on your face. I mean, if you want to be assertive about it or very clear about it, fine, you can have that kind of energy, but it's not negative. It's just clear. And if there's negativity, then there's a chance that you think it's bad that they don't know it, or that they do know it and they should know better, because there's nothing wrong with not knowing. So that message that you said, that you started off, that you led with, of I'm not good enough, or I'm not good, there's something wrong with me. We give that message when we come and say, what's wrong with you that you don't know this yet? Yeah. I want to speak to this for a second, and I want to tell the audience that we'll have another recording talking about this. I really hope we do. I don't know when, but I would love to. A lot of what you talked about is only possible, in my experience, and you did mention this a little bit, when I am the things you described the Nurtured Heart can do for me. When I know there's nothing wrong with me, and when I have that fullness of inner wealth, and I have that self-coaching, or that ability to fully feed and nourish and be empowered in myself, that I'm not martyring or hurting myself in leaning into the other person's bad behavior to see them and hold space for them without it being ignoring me. If I am not really, and again, with that transparency and honesty, if I am not really grounded in self-love and okayness, and I'm actually not okay, and I'm actually hurt, I'm actually hurting bad, and I'm actually angry, and I actually feel like I need someone to hear me. I don't feel heard. I don't feel seen. I don't feel loved. I don't feel appreciated. I don't feel recognized. I feel resentful. And I'm not taking care of that, then leaning into the other person instead of leaning into myself is not only allowing them to abuse me. Let's just use those words, even though we've talked about how they're not actually, they're not bad, but okay, we're letting them, not only having them abuse us, but we're abusing ourselves, and we're complicit. We're partners with the abuse, because we're leaning into it and inviting it to continue by putting ourselves there, ignoring ourselves, hurting ourselves, not listening to ourselves, not seeing ourselves, not hearing ourselves. And what I'd love to hear from you is, what practices have you done? What does it look like to bring yourself, and what does it look like on a daily basis to bring yourself to a place where your cup is full, so that leaning into someone else is really coming from an authentic space of course I'm good. Like, wow, you must really be going through something. Because there's no way that happens authentically without first having that threshold yourself of where you're coming from, a really strong
100%,
place.
100% in the history.
I don't know if you can answer that in like 30 seconds, or if we should just like have this a question mark. What do you think? Do you think you can give a 30 second? Yeah, let's address it quickly. 1 minute, 30 seconds, something like that.
So just to focus on one area where I see this a lot. So I work with a lot of men who are trying to repair their relationship after having betrayed their marriage, having betrayed their relationship. And so in that sense, it's a lot more obvious to the men that their wife's anger, for example, is, in a sense, they caused it to some degree. So it should be even easier then to be able to accept it and hear it. But a lot of the men that I work with struggle with that. And that's because what they're hearing is, underneath that anger, is, you're a bad boy, right? And so what I found
is... That's what I was going to say. That would be true if they consciously chose to betray from a place of, I think this is the right thing, and then they realize, oh, oops, it's really not the right thing. Hey, I feel so bad. Let me make this better. Whereas they themselves, to a certain extent, they are responsible, but they're also not responsible for the pain that they were in that caused them to do these things. It's not who they are.
That's really the secret, where I found kind of my role with supporting a lot of these men is what I call becoming unshakable. So it's like, if a lot of it is inner child work too, but if the individual is able to get to a place within himself that there's nothing to defend, then no matter how attacking the other person's language or energy seems, someone else can say something, even your spouse, it's up to you if it's true or not. So if I can get to a place where I have my own awareness or knowledge or ability to know if I'm a good boy or not, let's say, right, then what that does is it allows me to fully see someone else's experience and not have to personalize or defend anymore. There's nothing to defend. It's either true or it's not true for me. It could be true for them. It doesn't have to be true for me, right? So it's that inner work that comes first, becoming unshakable, that clarity that now I can look at the other person's pain and be there for them and see through the behavior and see someone potentially in pain, not in all cases, but sometimes.
So that's part 2, you guys. We're going to have a part 2. I want to have a part 2. We have to put this on the calendar. A part 2, which is, how do I get unshakable? That could be the title. How do I get unshakable? Or if you're in a rush, you can coach with, I would say, either one of us, even though I'm acting like I'm all, don't know about this stuff, but I do. And I love what my brother does. And I love that I do it too, in a maybe different way. But this is the gift that's been given to us through this, to me, okay, let me talk for myself. This has been the gift that has been given to me, is this, I'm not always unshakable. Just this morning, I got super, super triggered in my significant other, but it was because I was in a very weak place. But I know that it's within my power and reach to bring myself back to a place where I can be curious. And there's so much connection available in that. That's just exciting.
Definitely.
All right. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, how do they find you? What can they expect? What do you offer?
I'll put out my phone number first. That's the easiest way. It's 201-870-1770. It's 870-1770. And that's the easiest way. I offer free discovery calls and vision building. So if anyone feels lost or about anything really in life, you're welcome to come. We can talk, we can see. Often I might be able to share some resources or ideas. We may not end up working together. That's fine. But hopefully you'll walk away with some more clarity on what might support you or might help you in the general world of mental health, whether it's parenting, whether it's relationships. If it turns out that I find that we might be a good match and I might be able to support you, then let me propose some coaching work together. I do have a website that's still under construction a little bit, but you can check it out. It's Coach Abel, Coachable. So it's Coach Abel, CoachAbel.com. You can check that out. And it's another way to book a discovery call with me. And I'm always here to listen. I'm here to see if I can be somehow of service to connect people with solutions, with support and resources.
And you work with women and men both together?
Potentially,
separate?
Yeah.
Either
Really,
way.
whatever it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, love you, brother. And see you next time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
He's my big brother, everybody. Did I say that? I think I said that in the beginning. All right. Till
Yeah.
next time. Thank you for being here again.
Appreciate you and what you do, and I'm sure we'll speak again.
Yes. Hey, wait. Don't go yet. Take a minute to find the beautiful quality that you have, that you appreciate about yourself.